In this video, I'm going to show you how to transform this into this. Using furring strips and drywall compound, I'm going to build a faux brick wall I intend to use as a photography backdrop. However, you may also use this method to create a unique, inexpensive brick wall facade in your home. I've already removed the previous faux white brick panels in preparation for this project, as I'm looking to create a brick wall with better texture and realism. The first part is to clean the wall using a gentle soap and water mixture. Here, that step is already completed, so let's get started with the next step. The first thing is to create a solid substrate on which your bricks will be attached. Here, I'm hanging half-inch plywood and old OSB scraps secured to the wall studs using 2-inch deck screws.
The next part, we're going to be building a ledger board at the bottom of the wall, and that is to keep the bricks straight going across. And for that, I'm just going to use one of the furring strips that we're actually cutting the bricks out of. That way it gives the proper height for the bottom row of bricks. All right, our ledger board is on. That'll keep the brick rows nice, straight, and even, or at least I hope so. Anyway, so the next part is start making the bricks themselves. Now we get to start making our bricks. What I do is I take a piece of the furring strip that I got, which already has the rounded edges and everything, and I cut it to standard brick size, well, one of the standard brick sizes of 7 5/8 length. And of course the height, pretty close to an actual brick size. It's not exact, but it's very, very close. So visually it worked just great. Now for these, this is actually one of the few times you go looking for boards and lumber and whatnot where you actually want imperfections, because as we know, bricks have all kinds of imperfections in them. And of course this is a pretty smooth example, but there are a lot of furring strips that have edges cut, shaved. You've also got some, dents and stuff like that. Here's an example of a brick I've already kind of scratched up a little bit, trying to make it look a little more like authentic face of a real brick. Of course you got some of the shaved edge, you got some of the dents and divots and whatnot you can stick in this. And I want to show you a little bit about how to do this quickly and simply. Like I said, you can put these on the wall first and use a Dremel tool to do some of this stuff, but then you're looking at doing that to about 400 or 500 bricks. Whereas some of these imperfections can be put in before you can cut them. So let me show you how. Here's a way to take your brick and add some chipping and age to it. What you do is you take some gravel, spread it out on a hard surface, and spread out really good. You don't want it too close together. Put your brick down, add some weight to it, pick it back up, and you have yourself some good age dents going on there. Now what you can do is spread the gravel out in a long row and put your full board down. That way you can walk up and down the board and get your aging before you cut it. That way you don't have to do this 400 or 500 times now or more. Plus, I'm going to show you one other thing I did to make this a little bit easier.
This is a good way to dent up to 4 strips at once. Just exercise caution.
You just go in there and brush all that rock off. You see you got yourself some nice little imperfections happening there. Now, the good thing about some of these boards is that they do have some areas that are naturally imperfected. Like I said, it kind of makes it handy. Sometimes you don't look for this kind of stuff on lumber. You want ones nice and smooth and straight. But when you're dealing with bricks, brick face, this kind of stuff right here will add some authenticity to your bricks. All right, I got a few distressed boards here I can use to show you this. Now what I've done here is I've actually taken a piece, if your miter saw will allow this, clamped it here to give the length in here and where it cuts the 7 5/8 inch length. Now what I'm trying to do also is to cut about 6 boards at once, because if you're counting 400 or 500 bricks, you got 40 furring strips like I do, that's going to start taking you some time. So what I've done is I've made it to where I can stack 6 at once. Now once again, and I'll say this with everything that I've talked about so far, you need to be careful, because anything that shaves wood, cuts wood, otherwise damages wood, can be a hazard. So make sure, especially if you're dealing with a lot of sawdust, you might want to wear a mask for that, because they can irritate your throat and everything. So anyway, that being said, if you want to make sure these scoot up real nice and everything, of course you want to make sure that they're pushed in on here. They're up against here just fine. And right up against there. Because while this is an easy way to make 6 bricks at once, it's also an easy way to make 6 goof ups at once. 6 bricks. Here's another method you can use to kind of, especially shaving down like the edges of your brick up here to make it look nice and smooth and kind of give some rounded corners and looks like they've had some chips and weathering over the years. Now, I'm not going to sit there and do this with this because I'm holding the camera with one hand and the brick with the other. But if you're familiar with these, you know what they can do. And this is a good way you can use to sand down your bricks. You can scuff it up over here on this side. And that'll actually also add some character to your bricks. I'm gonna start putting some bricks on the wall here. I see I've already got about 3 started here. There's the ledger board from before, and then once I'm done with these, I'll take this off and put the last strip across the bottom here. But what I've done was, you want to put 2 nails in it, and that way, if you put 1 nail in the center, it could easily start doing this stuff. So you want to make sure you have 2 to keep them nice and straight. Now, another thing that's going to help out, and I did this for myself, made one of these, and you've kind of, this is 3/8 craft board, so that way it gets your spacing nice and neat. And what you do is you just put your brick, once you get your nails in there, put your brick in it, set it up against the wall, and then you can go ahead and start hammering up against the wall, pull your spacer off and finish it up. And that way it keeps it nice and straight, and you can eyeball it if you want to, but if you want them exactly 3/8 inch apart, which is one of the most common brick joint sizes, you can do it this way. If you prefer a 1/2 inch joint size, which is another good option, just get some 1/2 inch board. So anyway, let's put some bricks up. I was going across there. I had to go ahead and cut around the outlet, but you got to make sure that you want to keep your spacing the same, because when it gets on the other side, you want it to continue to be the proper spacing for your bricks. And if you are going along and you notice that you've gotten a little bit off, like a 1/8 of an inch or something like that, mortar is very forgiving, and so are the joints. Just, you can gradually make it up with the next one. Just overall, visually, you're not really going to see it. Did the same thing down here with this outlet, and of course you can see I think I got a little bit off, but I was able to make it up right there. And of course, in the end, you'll never be able to tell it. The first row done here. I'm about to start the second row. Of course, you start off with a 1/2 brick because, you know, we're staggering them in a standard brick pattern here. So what you want to make sure you do, though, you don't want to just cut 1/2 brick and set it up here, because it's going to throw your spacing off. You got to take into account your joint as well. So you want to make sure you cut about 1/2 brick and about an additional 3/16 off that, and that way when you put your measurement up between it here, the actual what's in the center of the brick below it is actually the joint, and then that way it continues on down the line and makes it all nice and even. Another quick tip, one thing you need to do when you're going across here, some people choose when they're starting off to go ahead and chalk line, make sure they're staying even all the way across. Last thing you want to do is get 4 or 5 rows in, find out that the bricks are going upward to the left, to the right. Of course, I'm using my little tool to keep it straight across there, which isn't doing too bad, but some of these bricks, even though their furring strip's supposed to be the same width, some of them are a little bit different and cause a little step up, step down issue. And of course, with that, you can use your little dowel rods, stuff like that, to kind of do some independent joint measurements between individual bricks. However, another good way to do it, simple, get your little low level, stick it up there, make sure that one's looking pretty, that one's not too bad. You just want to kind of keep an eye on, you don't want them all the way across to look like this. But as you go along, just kind of do this, and you can actually get a larger level to kind of look at the line as they go 2 or 3 bricks at a time. So keep yourself level across there, and you should do fine.
If you have more than 1 tub of bricks, you might select them at random to mix up your brick pattern. Also, you might notice in some of the close-ups that I've screwed some bricks to the board instead of using nails. This was a personal choice, giving me a way to easily remove the bricks in the future should the need ever arise.
All right, one of the next steps before we get to the painting part, do a little bit of sanding to kind of get off some of the rough edges. But I also want to take a minute and explain what I'm also going to do is I'm going to take the nail set and I'm going to push these nails back in the wood just a little bit, and then put a little bit of wood filler over them and sand it off. That way when you paint it, the nails aren't standing out in a pattern like they will, because once you paint it, all this wood grain is going to go away and the nails are going to become a lot more prevalent as a pattern on the bricks.
So now if you decide you want to stain these, I would recommend you don't do it this way, because wood filler tends to take stain differently than the wood around it, which could make them stand out even worse. So you want to keep the nails dark along with your stain for sure. Now, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about the nail setting part, because I'm going to go out on a limb and assume if you're doing this, you know how to use a nail set and nail. But what you want to do is you want to put it on the end of the nail. You just kind of give it a little tap with a hammer. You don't want to push it way back in there, just enough to get a little wood filler over it. I got the nail setting all done. Now I'm putting a little bit of wood filler over the nails. I'm going to show you a little bit, like I said, I'm not going to show you a whole lot of detail on this, but get a little bit of wood filler on your knife or on your finger. You put it over the nail like that right there. You just kind of scoop it off. And then later on, once this dries, you'll go back over it with a sander, sand it smooth, and you paint over it, your nail will disappear. So there you go. Okay, we got all of our nail holes filled, and now we're ready, and it's all dried up and everything. Now we're ready to sand it. And like I said, not a lot of detail on this. It's pretty straightforward. Got some 120 sandpaper here. Like with this right here, what you want to do is just kind of take it. What you want to do is get those nails file smooth. Try to get as smooth as you can. You don't want any surface bumps and everything like that when you start to paint. So anyway, what you're trying to do is just make those nice and smooth across there. Also, at this point, you can take the opportunity to use some sandpaper like a 50 grit, 120, something like that, and get rid of some of the wood fibering that happens with some of these. Like I said, we're trying to make this look like brick, not like wood, so you want to get rid of those fibers. And also, quick tip, you also probably want to use a mask while you're doing this, because it's going to create a lot of dust. And since this is a photo studio and this is completely up to you, I've also added plastic to the equation to kind of keep the dust in this area and not all over my other props and equipment. So anyway, time to get to sanding. Okay, I got everything all sanded, ready to start painting. I've actually started painting over here a little bit. And what we're doing here is we're going to put a base coat over the whole thing. And what you want to do is kind of figure out what kind of brick wall you're going for. If you want like solid brown brick, red brick, if you want a combo, I'm kind of doing a combo, but I'm putting the base coat on first, and then you can go back through and kind of make each brick a little bit unique and everything. So what I'm doing, first off, I'm taking this, and this base coat here is called Terra Earth. I don't know if it'll be around when you're doing this, but just FYI. What I'm doing is going around the edges, down the sides real good. Then I'm gonna take a roller, go over the face. Then I'll take the corner, take the brush and go over places like this right here where you might have to get in there a little bit. And a couple other tips, make sure you're using flat paint, because if you're planning on putting mortar between the bricks, gloss coats are not going to stick to that very well. So you want to make sure you get the flat paint, but that kind of works for you because most bricks are flat anyway. You don't have a lot of gloss bricks. Now, if you're not planning on putting mortar in and you want them glossy, go ahead. But for me, I've got to have it flat because I'm planning on putting kind of a mortar in between them. So there's that, and I'm also using paint plus primer. I mean, you don't have to do it that way, but it saves you a step. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and continue with this base coat, and we'll go from there. I should note, I switched back to the brush to finish the face of the bricks because it takes a lot less paint. All right, our base coat is good and dry. It looks really good. Already looks like a nice brick wall. Of course, I want this brick wall to look more like an aged brick wall that's been through some stuff. It's got some splatters on it. It's got some mistinted bricks and stuff like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and start on working with one of the next steps. I've got a little bit darker red paint. I want to start putting on some of the bricks kind of randomly. And then from there, once all that gets dry, I want to start working with more like just intricate tools, like some sponges and scrapers and stuff like that, and kind of make some individual adjustments to some of the bricks. This is where your creativity kind of goes wild, because you're going to have, I mean, you may have a totally different look you want in your brick wall to be. This is the part where you get to be kind of fun and make the brick wall your own. A couple of different tips. One, of course, make sure you don't have to necessarily fill in every single little crevice like you did with the original base paint, because you want it to look like a chipped brick. And that really kind of gives a nice contrast and texture, makes it look good. Second tip, get you one of these. They're actually thinner than the brick, and that way when you're carefully going across there, you're not bumping the bricks above and below it, because obviously you want it to look like a darker brick, not a brick that was painted and someone kept missing the brick. So anyway, two good tips. It doesn't have to be perfectly coated, and get you one of these. This is where kind of the creativity comes into play. And what I'm kind of doing
I'll show you here. This is the part where the bricks become very forgiving. What you'll do is get a little bit of your base paint in there. Not a whole lot. You got yellows, reds, brown, orange, that kind of stuff. So for this, actually, I'm going to use one pavement down in one of the trays. Don't get a whole lot because dark colors tend to go a long way. What you do is you get a little bit of this in there, a little bit of that. Mix it together real good, kind of run it over your tray there. It's all going to mix together a little bit, but that's okay. What you do is you take this, pick out your brick, just kind of slide it on there like that. And you don't want it to be a solid color. You want it to be kind of messed up. Like I say, you also don't want to fill in every little gap that it has. Like you want to keep your brick chips up here and everything. So something like that right there. When you sit back, look, this all starts coming together. Get some darks and some lights. I'll kind of keep documenting as I go along here, but this is kind of a good way, kind of little by little. In this case, I've got like close to 400 or 500 bricks I can play with here, so a lot of room for creativity. But I'm going to take that, and there you go. You got a nice brick. Looks like it's got some aging down here, some darkening. Looks really good. Now you don't get ridiculous with that if you don't want your wall to be really dark, but every good old brick wall has some dark bricks. So let's do another one right here. And of course, this is also very forgiving. If for some reason you get these in here and you think, hey, I don't like how many dark bricks there are, or I really wish there was a more orange brick there, whatever. Well, you know what? We got some orange paint. I can fix that real quick. So I just got this brick wall. Really got some nice variation in the colors now. Gone brick to brick, put some yellows, some oranges, and that kind of stuff. I was gonna show you what kind of what I'm doing real quick. Brush, or I mean sponge, cut it in half, dip a little bit of paint on it. You can pat it out, get effects kind of like this. Also got a neat looking little brush like this. Like I said, this is kind of the part where you can get creative. Kind of put it in some paint like that. You take it over here. You can find yourself a nice brick and kind of dab it on there. Get a little bit of texture like that. There's all kinds of stuff you can do with this at this stage. I said, don't necessarily copy everything I'm doing. This is the part where you get creative and make the brick wall into what you want it to be. So, okay, I'm here about to mix up the mortar. And of course, like I said, I'm using a quick set 90-minute hot mud or joint compound, drywall joint compound, mainly because it's low shrinkage, it's a lot lighter on the wall, it sets up really quickly, you can tint it. There's all kinds of reasons why. The other reason why is actual brick mortar might have some trouble sticking to the wood and the paint without some additives added to it. So I'm going with joint compound, but you want to make it look, you know, more like brick mortar. And of course, joint compound dries fairly smooth and fairly white. So in order to make this kind of look more little brick mortarish, I'm actually adding some playground sand to it. Quick tip on that, if I was you, I would use a metal colander to weed out some of the larger rocks that can get caught in your grout bag and clog up your tip. Not a big inconvenience, but if you don't want to stop and mess with that every so many feet, then just weed out the large rocks to begin with. You won't miss them. Second thing is, of course, you want to get the tinting right because this stuff dries very white. I'm using just a little bit of acrylic paint, and basically what I'm doing is, I think for the entire bag, which is an 18-pound bag, I'm using about 6 tablespoons of paint. And also, when you are mixing up the bag, I found, for me anyway, the water ratio they say to use it. It's not the sand and the paint's not gonna make that big of a difference, and it actually mixes up to a good consistency. But if you want a little bit thicker, a little bit thinner, you can adjust that as well. That's the beauty thing about joint compound. It's very forgiving. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and mix some of this up, and I'll be back to show you how to pipe it in here in a moment. Got our joint compound mixed up here with a little bit of paint and sand and everything. I don't go into a whole lot of visual detail on the rest of this because there's a lot of video shows you how to put mud into a grout bag. But since you have the grout bag here, just like you would if it was regular brick mortar, what you do is you use some kind of trowel or something like that. You scoop it up in there, put it in there, fill it up to about, maybe 3/4 of the way. That way you can twist the end of the bag and apply pressure so it'll come out the tip at the bottom. So anyway, let me go ahead and get this in the bag and we'll go from here. This is one of the messiest parts of the procedure. Okay, as you see, I got my grout bag here. Got the end of it all twisted up and everything. Now we put some pressure on the tip up here. So what you want to do is, you go up here, We're going to squeeze it out just like that right there. All the way across, all the way across, all the way across. Once again, a lot of videos online tells you how to put brick mortar in. It's the same process. Now once you get all the way across your brick, then do your verticals. And you want to kind of overfill a little bit, because here, once it gets almost dry, then you're going to be able to take your joiner tool, go across there, and make it look a little more authentic. So go across like that. And do your verticals. And there you go. Okay, once this is set up a little bit, you got, and I see you got overfill here. And what you want to do is you want to wait till it gets to about fingerprint dryness, like that right there. This quick set, like I said, the stuff I'm using is 90-minute, but of course you don't want to wait till it gets too hard, because then it'd be more of a crumbly mess than a fingerprint mess. But so you can see how it's fingerprinting right there. It's drying up really good. Still malleable, that's what you want. If you wait too much longer, this stuff can go from malleable to crumbly real quick, which, you know, for a wall that's supposed to look aged, that might work really well. But if you want really nice smooth seams, you want to kind of go, or smooth joints rather, you might want to go and still look malleable. What you want to do once it gets to that point, get yourself a joiner tool. This is a 3/8 and a 1/2 end. And of course it just kind of depends on what you want to do with that. What you do is go to your spot, kind of run along there like that right there, and that gives you that nice in between the bricks look. I'll run another one here for you. You're looking for that old style wall, kind of, you know, but the old splatters and stuff that's just happened to it over the years. One thing you could do that I found, you can, once you've got everything in place and you got a little bit of your mortar left over, just put a little bit on the trowel like that. And you can find yourself a good spot on the wall and just kind of do something like that. Move it out a little bit. There you go. When that dries, it'll kind of look like an old patch mark. So just a quick tip if you're trying to make your wall look old and dated. So there it is, our quote-unquote brick wall made out of wood and drywall. And the only thing I've done, I've let it dry out here for about a couple of days now. I've got a dehumidifier in the room, which helped out quite a bit. Putting drywall in that thick makes it where it takes a little bit longer to dry up, but really makes it look nice and authentic. And one thing you can do, one last little tips, one last little touches, is take like a large bristle brush, something like that, just kind of run over it like this right here. You know, knock off all the loose chunks and everything. And like I said, this is supposed to look like a rough brick wall, so you don't want to push and poke too much on the big chunks. You want them to be left there. Like here's a chunk down here that I think kind of adds some character to it. I don't want to mess around with that too much, it'll fall off. So, but anyway, so there you have it. And of course, at this point, you can put on any other finishing touches you want, any kind of whitewashing, stuff like that. I think I'm pretty good with the way this looks. If I do a few photo sessions and I want to change some stuff, I will, but otherwise, I think it is pretty much ready. So thank you for watching.